everybody. Happy Sunday to you. I hope your day is going well. I hope your year is going well as we embark on a new decade here, 2020. I just love the sound of that, don't you? That notion that perhaps our vision will clear up, and where we have not been seen clearly before, maybe now's the time that we can come into alignment with a spiritual vision. So we all know that the world could use a clearer vision coming from the truth of us, and for each of us in our own individual lives, of course, we can benefit by a clearer seeing of the truth and the whole truth. And it just opens up an opportunity for us to begin to enlighten our perspective when we decide in any moment, whether it's the beginning of a year or the beginning of a decade, but in any moment we can decide that we are going to take our perceptions from the truth of us rather than to be duped by the illusions of life, to be stuck in the past and stuck in the old ways of seeing and the old ways of believing and the old stories that have informed our beliefs and have really limited us from enjoying lives to live out the full potential of what it means to be a human being without the limits, without the fears and the doubts and the limited beliefs of the past. That's certainly my commitment as I begin this year, and I have been fired up again by the possibility of just simply thinking that the past is behind me and not looking back. It's a tendency for the mind to want to go backwards and review what happened and our regrets and what didn't work well. But there's just no value in that. It's as much as we like to spend time in the past, as much as we do look backwards, there's no future in the rearview mirror, as the expression goes. We can only improve our life, we can only enhance our experience in this present moment. And that is not just an affirmation, that's absolutely the truth. There is no way that we can change the past, but we can certainly learn from the past by focusing on who and what we truly are, and take our guidance from the best in us, from the clear mind and the open heart. For that is the guidance system that you and I have that has been underutilized, that has been left dormant. And so in large part we have taken our guidance from the conditioning of our past, from the experiences we've had in the past that have come to form beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of. But that is simply a very limited version of us. And I think you and I can be excited, and we can feel empowered by the notion that the life that has gone before us has nothing to do with the life that is possible for us going forward. So even though I am well into my 60s and have lived a number of years, I still am excited about the possibilities of life and how I can access more of who I truly am, the deeper wisdom of my nature, the opening of my heart to a greater capacity to love and to express that love, and ways to heal from whatever seems to limit me or seems to hold me back from realizing the greater possibilities of this life. So I hope you join me in that. I hope you have enthusiasm for this work we are doing together, for these insights that we are bringing forward, and for the practices that I have been encouraging myself and you through sharing these messages to engage in our life, to really take on practices that keep our hearts and minds centered in the truth of us and in the possibilities that are available to us when we are connected with the truth of our being. So we've been looking at some of those practices in the last several weeks, and what I know about them is, and I mentioned this in my article that I sent out Saturday, is that it's easy for the mind to come in somewhere along the line when we've been doing these practices for a while and start to introduce some doubt or some skepticism or some withering enthusiasm for continuing. And it's all rooted in the ego, that part of us that is separated from the source of us, from our true nature. And its very nature, its very survival is based on the idea that it is separate, and that its only hope for survival is in finding a better future, is in looking to the world for some better circumstances and looking to other people to be different, and just a constant redesigning of the landscape of life is its only hope of survival. And so it never would engage in the kind of practices that you and I have taken on, the practice of being quiet, the practices of allowing our minds to just go still for a time. Because to do so from the ego standpoint, it's equivalent to its own demise. Because when the mind goes quiet, then the ego doesn't have any sense of its separate identity. And its own existence is threatened by the quieting of the mind. And our other practice of being grateful, of just appreciating everything that is before us, and taking special note of how life is working, and everything that is good, and whatever blessings that we can see in our life, that's an antithetical to the ego's purpose, which is always on red alert, which is always rooted in fear, and always on the lookout for what can harm it and what is threatening its survival. So it is the absolute opposite orientation to looking for what's good. It wants to look for what's wrong and what's bad and what's missing and what's lacking and who's wrong and how it's right. And all of those sort of notions can really get into our head and sabotage our practice. So I just want to put that out there, not to affirm that this is happening for you, but just to let you know that if this is happening, that this is not to be seen as anything other than your lower nature or your little separate self trying to sabotage your efforts to awaken. Because if you awaken to your true nature, then the ego really has no hold on your consciousness anymore. And that's, of course, would be the end of the ego, which is a good day for the soul, is a bad day for the ego, as somebody once said. So acknowledging that if this is happening, just basically kind of do what like Jesus did when he was in the wilderness, when he was on his vision quest, and he was, really getting quiet, and he was then entertained, you might say, by the voice of the ego, which is, called Satan in the biblical version. But it tempted him to go back to his lower nature, his human nature of being greedy and hungering for power and control, which is what the ego thrives on. And Jesus had that experience too. And yet, in the end, he was able to rebuke that noise, that voice, by saying, "Get thee behind me." So if that's what's happening in our lives, if we're hearing that voice as well, we can be just as resolute as Jesus, the master teacher, in saying, "Get thee behind me. I have got spiritual growth to do. I'm committed to it. I'm here to awaken to who I am. And I'm not going to let anything stand in my way. I'm not going to let the temptation to get small interfere with the possibility of my own spiritual growth and spiritual awakening." That's what you and I are committed to. And so I'm excited to be with you on this quest, and to be your support, and to be have the faith for you. If it's somehow lacking in you, I will believe in the possibility that you have, because we all have this possibility, and we sometimes just have to be more vigilant and work against the default of this small voice of the ego. Getting into today's lesson today, I've been talking, extensively over the last few weeks about spiritual practices, and I'm going to continue with that today and take a little different tack on what I've been talking about. And this is something that I think is often overlooked and is probably something, in my own experience, has not been something that I've been real vigilant on, even though I have been aware of it, but I haven't really introduced it into my regular practice. But it's so effective and so aligned with how we can really move into the attunement with our spiritual nature that it really belongs in this series as we're looking for ways to close the gap between the awareness of who we really are and to bring ourselves into full alignment with that experience of our source, of who we are and who we've come here to be in this lifetime. And before I get into the specifics of that practice, I want to point out that there's an understanding that is sometimes not really fully articulated, and that is this notion that you and I have this right to choose our experience. And this is sometimes given sort of a passing discussion, or it is sometimes just not introduced in a way that doesn't seem highly probable for many of us. So I want to bring it back and sort of raise it up and raise up the significance of this power that you and I have to make a choice. For the truth is that this spiritual awareness is something that is latent within us, and it's latent only because it's fallen beneath the conscious mind that you and I have, and not that it's missing in us, because we are made in the image and likeness of our source of spirituality, and we are spiritual beings. We are not just these physical beings, as much as that seems to be our nature when we're in an ordinary mind consciousness. But the fact that we already have and we already are this spiritual being, then it's important for us to recognize that, and then to say, well, what is happening in our experience that we don't have that sense of our true nature all the time? And of course, it has to do with our focus. It has to do with what we're paying attention to and where we are taking our sense of self from. And as much as we think and we would assume that this should be absolutely natural to us, that we shouldn't have to have a spiritual practice to simply realize who we are, it would seem that that's be something that would just be as natural as, breathing. And yet we have conditioned ourselves into a sense of ourself that is limited, that is a body-mind. And because we have created that sense of separation through what we have come to perceive and then believe, then it takes effort, it takes conscious intention and deliberation, and a deliberate intention to bring us back into full realization of our true nature. And so to know that is important, so that we don't become so apathetic or somewhat lazy in just waiting for this to show up for us, when in fact there is something that we need to do on a moment-by-moment basis in order to actualize what is in potential in our true spiritual nature, and to bring it into conscious awareness, and so that it makes a difference in our life and we can experience it and we can embody it. So in my article that I wrote, the blog article this week, I made reference to Martin Luther King, and I felt that there was a wonderful parallel, because as we know, the wonderful story of Dr. Martin Luther King is that, he was a proponent and a wonderful voice and an impassioned voice for bringing an end to racial segregation and discrimination. And his famous speech that many of us either heard firsthand or have heard since then, the I Have a Dream speech, And in that speech, at the very end, the last words that he said are, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. And he took those words from an old Negro spiritual. But what he was affirming was that he could see the day when these inalienable rights, the rights that all men being created equal, would actually experience that actually would be the reality for all men, regardless of their race, that they would experience freedom and equal rights and be treated with dignity, would actually be a reality, which had started, from the Declaration of Independence. It was already affirmed. It was said that all men are created equal. And it also said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And I love that those preceding words. We hold these truths to be self-evident. In other words, the freedom that we're promised in those words were not freedoms that was invented or legislated by the penning of that document or that Declaration of Independence. It's a freedom that is already inherent in everyone, that we are all free. We are free because we were made in the image and likeness of freedom, of spirit, of love, of wholeness, and our nature is absolutely free, and so it was such a contradiction to those of us who could see that even though all men are inherently free, there were some that moved about freely and without any restraints or confinement or prejudice or discrimination, and that there were those that did not enjoy that freedom, and that disparity was really raised up the call for change, for a spiritual and a human awakening of consciousness, to see that disparity and to do something about it and to make a difference, make a different choice, and to bring forth the decision and the commitment to freeing all people under that same inherent rule and law that is a divine law, that we are all free. So similarly for us, we have this spiritual freedom, and even though it's absolutely innate in us, it's already established in us, it does require that we take action in order to claim that freedom when we are faced with a choice to either live a life or interpret life or perceive life as something which is a limitation, or to see that we are free. And this is the choice point that you and I have in every moment, that it does take us choosing to either listen to the voice of spirit, which is a voice of freedom, or listen to the voice of the ego, which has a whole list of requirements in order for us to be free and be happy and to be at peace. And you and I are very familiar with that voice. And it's constantly a voice for limitation. It's a voice for confinement. It's a voice for human bondage. It's a voice for a conditional well-being that is a constant nagging to-do list and a to-be list, which never ends. And even when one box gets checked, it comes up with a new item that still needs to be taken care of in order for us to experience the well-being that we're seeking. And so we realize this, and when we realize this, it is a call for us to take action and to be more vigilant and to be more awake to when we are making choices that are rooted in limitation, and to pause in those moments and see, is there another choice that I could be making that is rooted in who and what I truly am? A choice based on love, a choice based on possibility, a choice based on spiritual vision, and a choice based upon the well-being that's already within me, so that we are not constantly raising objections to life showing up the way it is. And so sort of an endless list that constitutes the barriers to our peace and happiness. And so freedom, spiritual freedom, is the topic of this week. And it's a topic that's in my blog and of this message as we move forward. And it's for us to realize that we don't have to do anything, and life does not have to show up any particular way in order for us to enjoy freedom. And I'm talking about freedom of our own heart and of our own mind. And that's the kind of freedom that we're really after. And, all of the things that we seem to want in life, we're really not that interested in accomplishing those things in life for their sake, but only to accomplish those for the reason of how we will feel. It's the payoff of all of the desires that we have in life is not just the desire itself. The manifestation of some outer condition is only a means to an end. And the end is so that we have these feelings that we yearn for. The feeling of peace of mind, the feeling of love, of belonging, of feeling whole, of just general happiness. And the way we've wired it, according to this separate sense of self, is that those experiences are outcomes, or they are the result of life showing up and becoming a certain way. And so our prayer life then is just tied so tightly to trying to get things to change in life and get people to change. And boy, does this keep us in bondage. Does this ever rob us of freedom? And so if we really want to be free, or if we really want to experience the freedom of our true nature, then it's an invitation for you and I to listen quite deeply for the question, what would it take for me to be peaceful? What would it take for me to be happy? And where is the source of that peace? And where is the source of that happiness? And have I experienced in the past those moments when I have tried to get things to be a certain way, and I've experienced maybe a moment of a fleeting moment of peace or happiness or pleasure, and yet right there shortly thereafter I'm back again, so seeking and not finding the deeper peace and the deeper well-being that I really want. And so that's what we're here for. We're here to liberate ourselves from the dictates of an ego that would require that life be a particular way in order for us to be okay. We deserve that freedom, just like the Declaration of Independence. We declare, and we say that it is self-evident that we are all created equal, entitled to life, liberty, and happiness. And that life, liberty, and happiness is not something that comes as a result of you getting what you want. It comes from you and I waking up to the truth of who we really are. So as we look at the ways that we can close the gap and to bring ourselves into alignment and attunement with our true nature, which we claim is absolutely available to us in every moment, and just to recognize that there are things that we can do at the human level. In other words, there are possibilities for us to shift our consciousness and therefore shift our energetic imprint that we put on the world and we put out onto the universe that can maximize our alignment with the truth of us. And we talked previously about getting quiet and meditation and using gratitude and appreciation. And these things all are ways of just opening ourselves up and putting ourselves more in tune and aligned with the truth of us. And so today I want to talk again a little bit about the emotional basis of bringing ourselves into the field, the resonant field with our true nature. And I did mention this in the last message about how we can vision using the feelings that we have as a way to approximate the equivalent vibration of satisfaction or of happiness or of peace or abundance or whatever it is that we're seeking in our life. That by reimagining or remembering a time when we had those experiences of well-being and abundance and love, then we can recreate that same vibration. So today I just want to extend that a little bit more, and I actually got this idea, this modification of that, or this enhancement of that same idea, from watching Abraham Hicks. And if you haven't listened to any of the Abraham Hicks material, I will commend it to you. It's quite interesting. It's a channeling of Abraham, which is a spiritual guide that is spoken through Esther Hicks, and there's a ton of these talks on YouTube, and they're not only inspiring, but they're also entertaining. And I'm going to play a clip of one here in just a moment, so for your entertainment, and also to emphasize this point. And so the point that they make in their teachings is that the most important thing that we can do is not to go after a changing life, which, I think we've established that pretty well in the messages that I have been sharing with you, that we're not here to try to manipulate life so that we can be happy, because that would just really fall right into the arms of the ego, just play right into its hand of how we find peace and happiness. But instead of going after the thing that we want, is we just look for ways to feel good. And that anything that we can do to feel good is putting us in the vibration of our natural state, our natural spiritual state. Because when we are connected with the truth of us, we feel good, we feel whole, we feel complete, we feel optimistic, we feel that all of life is just a grand adventure. We feel that possibilities always exist, no matter what is going on. We're optimistic. We're hopeful. We're open. We're receptive. We're forgiving. We're patient, and we're kind, and we're loving, and we're generous. And all of those qualities, they're not things that we have to adopt. They just flow naturally from us, just like water flows downhill. It's when we are in our true nature, then all of these qualities of a good life, and a fulfilling life, are in abundance in our conscious mind and in our heart. And so the practice is simply not just to sort of conjure up thoughts and then try to come up with those feelings. That's sometimes very hard to do that. But actually just look for things that we can experience in our life that naturally make us feel good and happy. And so I'm going to share a few of those after I play this video clip for you. And this video clip is called Get Happy. And you can find it on YouTube and play it again for your own enjoyment at another time if you just search under Abraham Hicks Get Happy, and you'll hear this.
Have we made our explanation too complicated? I've been studying your work since 1990. I'm trying really hard to remember your words, and so we want to give them to you in an easier to remember format. Get happy in any way you can. If you have to run away from home, do it. If you have to go to the beach every day, do it. Do anything that you can do to get happy. In most cases, it does not involve action, because in most cases, if you take action in your effort to get happy, some boom drops on you, like you get fired and then you don't have any money or something like that. Get happy in your mind. Find a way to make such peace with where you are that you allow your gap to close. That's what getting happy is. It's making peace with where you are, because if you make peace with where you are, this vortex that is spinning will suck you right into the perfection of all of it. Get happy. Simplistic, we know. That's why we write so many books. But then all of those books, you say, oh, there's so much to learn. Look at all of these pages. There's so much to learn. All of these emotions that I didn't even know that I had. And all of these laws, look at all of these laws, universal laws. What in the hell is vibration anyway? I don't understand. Ask and it is given. That's bullshit. I've been asking, where's my stuff? Where's my stuff? I've been asking, where's my stuff? So we give you all of the words and you say, way too many words, and we say, get happy, and you say, oh, too simplistic. And we say, really, all you got to do is just find a reason to feel good. In other words, that conversation we just had, that was better than the whole seminar put together. You laughed, you know it's true. There isn't anything that is written here that you didn't know the day you were born. We're just reminding you of it. You can tell every time you enter into a conversation that you know isn't going well for you. You can feel it. You can feel when you're defeating yourself. You can feel when you're bolstering yourself. You can feel when you're uplifting another. You can feel when you're deflating another. You know this stuff. No, you know this stuff. You have just, over time, lowered your standards about how you're willing to feel. You've gotten used to being ornery. You're not deliberate about feeling good because you don't understand the power of feeling good, you see. We're not talking about laughing hee-haw off the wall. We're talking about feeling interested in things. We're talking about waking up and being glad that you're awake and glad that you're alive and looking out across the landscape and wanting to see what's there. We're talking about seeing things and feeling interested in them. We're talking about having a conversation with someone across the table and devouring every word and loving the conversation that you're having. We're talking about looking into the eyes of children and babies and animals and lovers and feeling the fullness of who you are. We're talking about getting tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and seeing the world through the eyes of your total self rather than this fragmented one, you see. Just chill out.
And so let me share with you some of the things that I have been doing lately, and I'm really putting together a bit of a playlist. What really gets me in a positive state of mind is really wonderful performing arts. I can be just moved by really powerful and great vocal performances. Denise and I often watch The Voice, and we just love to see these amazing people who just sing from their heart with such passion, and it just, to me, just moves me right at the core of my being, and I feel so good. Sometimes I just feel God bumps, when I hear just amazing music. And it could be instrumental music as well. That's, something by Yo-Yo Ma, or, these great instrumentalists, and beautiful piano music. And so that is just one thing that I can do. And I'm putting together a playlist. And I've actually had one started some time ago, but I'm going to be more intentional about it, and I'm going to put it together and then get it on my phone into a playlist that I can just loop. And I'm also going to add to that a couple other things, and that is some great dramatic performances, some great motivational talks that have come from movies that I've seen, where I've been just really lifted up, and it just really touches my heart and my soul, and just inspires me, and just reminds me of the power of the word, and the power of belief, and the power of stretching myself, and what's possible when one exceeds their perceived limitations. And so that's going to be part of this playlist. And then also, I love comedy. And great comedy to me just opens me up. Talk about feeling free. When I'm laughing, when I'm wholeheartedly laughing, it's something that I find extremely funny. My heart is wide open, and there is a complete sense of freedom and a complete sense of optimism. And again, these are all ways of bringing ourselves into this good feeling. And as Hicks says in the video that you just watched, do whatever you can to get happy. And when you do that, then you're putting yourself in the vibrational match for the truth of you, the same vibration of your source, which has a constant feeling of well-being and optimism and possibility and love and happiness. So I commend this practice to you, and I'm going to put up this playlist that I'm putting together up on my website. It'll be on the resources page, which is a sub-menu of the offerings tab on the website, larryshellink.com. So if you want to see what I'm listening to and what's doing it for me, I'll share it with you, and I'd be glad to receive what really helps you and what gets you in a good space and in a good mood. Let's use everything we can in this lifetime. It's all there. It all can be used for our awakening. Anything that you can find that opens your heart, that puts you in a good mood, assuming that it's not harmful to you. Because I know it's easy for us to go into some addictive behaviors as well, and that's not what we want to do, because that'll be temporary and it actually might take us farther from what we really want to do. But if we can find things that are psychologically healthy for us, that can put us in a positive, expectant attitude and mood, I think it belongs in our spiritual arsenal of ways that we can awaken. So I commend that to you, along with the other practices that we've been doing. I'd love to hear back from you. Let me know how it's going for you, and give me feedback on these messages and the other offerings that I'm putting out. It's my delight to do this, and I affirm that it's working for you, and that you are in this new year finding new ways to more powerfully awaken to the truth of your being, and to the love and the peace and the happiness that are your inalienable right, and that you're making choices each day that enhance the experience of who and what you truly are. I know that the universe is on our side in this quest, for it is the will of the Creator to express itself through its creation, which is you and me. And it's in this truth that we can all celebrate every moment, because it is always happening, and it is always a possibility that it can move through us according to our willingness and our support and our contribution to this mighty destiny that we all have. Namaste, dear friends. Talk to you soon.